Hey everybody, I've been doing some thinking, which has Michelle concerned because, as she observes, thinking's a bit out of character for me. Nonetheless, I've been scratching my head as I ponder the May 18th program at St. Elizabeth Seton focused on end of life spirituality and logistics. Now, in full disclosure, I myself have never died, not even once, so I cannot claim to have direct experience or expertise. I did come whisper thin close, however, close enough to feel the very breath of God and remove any doubt for me about the reality of an afterlife, or probably more accurately, the reality of unending life. Also, once when I simultaneously had pneumonia and strep throat, Michelle told me I looked like death warmed over, so well, that might count for something. The term afterlife, it trips me up a bit. It's reminiscent of a category of terms referring to an encore after the main event, such as the afterword in a book. Other words in this genre include after party, aftermath, after effects, aftertaste, or an after dinner drink. But what if this life is not the main event? What if this life is just prelude? After all, we do not think of a butterfly as the afterlife of a caterpillar, nor do we think of spring as the afterlife of winter. What happens if we think of eternity as the main event, and we think of this life as merely our tadpole stage? As Christians, we're often taught that this life is merely a warm-up act, but do we live that way? More to the point, do we regard death that way? What if we regarded death as merely the temporary dimming of lights during a scene change, or as a chrysalis we enter for transformation? Setting aside whatever language we use, it seems we tend to think of death much more as a final and permanent state than as a transitional experience. This is not exactly a resurrection mindset, is it? Here are three things I have observed about our cultural approach to death and the end of life that I believe make it so much harder. One, we treat it much more like an event than a transformation. Two, we spend way more of life's energy trying to avoid death than preparing for death. And three, we don't talk about it nearly enough. Consider for a moment how much time and energy we invest in preparing for other events, for a graduation or a wedding or the arrival of a new baby. Goodness, I spent 5 years preparing for ordination, and I still wasn't ready. Now, think about how much time we invest in preparing for death. Shoot, some of us might spend a few hours planning our funeral, but that's really about it. How might we think differently about both life and death if we saw them not as opposites, but as complements? What if we see all of life as spring training for death, a time during which we prepare to go pro by learning how to live in unity with love, mercy, and peace? If we did, would we love more and hate less? Would we be more generous and less selfish? Would we be kinder and less cruel? My point in all this is that we spend most of our lives living as though we can somehow escape death. We minimize and even outright ignore the reality of this inevitable and unavoidable reality. Not long ago, I had a conversation with an oncologist who relayed that one of the most challenging parts of his job is dealing with patients and families who believe death is a great injustice, rather than embracing it as natural and inevitable transition. What if? What if we accept the reality and see death not as a failure to live, but as a graduation from the limits of temporal life to the freedom of eternal life? Give it some thought. And then join us, won't you, for a program called Your Life, Your Legacy, Your Faith, Monday, May 18th at 6 p.m. at St. Elizabeth and Seton in Green Bay. It's an evening of enrichment and information for adults of all ages and stages. For more information, visit the parish website at seasgb.org. That's seasgb.org. Thanks.